So it's like it's insanity to look at. I look at like the registration list and the slot allocation, and there's no China, there's no Mongolia, and then I'm completely like I'm baffled. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how can you like even if you wanna like cunt over like NG Esports where we have like 5 nationalities, okay, I can kind of accept that, but no Mongolia, no China. That's like that's what kind of like pisses me off because like they don't do their work before like putting up like the slot allocations.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Geographically Challenged. This one, number 27. It's a bit of a scuffed episode, so hopefully everything's working out okay. Been a bit of a kerfuffle trying to get this one all going, especially considering we've been so busy lately. Been doing a lot of casting. Pilski's been doing a lot of stuff as well, and as you can see, Bleh is not even available today, so we've really just been trying to cram an episode in at some point, and eventually, push came to shove, we had to get ImpressioN onto the show. So looking forward to hearing your opinions, ImpressioN, because you've been quite a little bit outspoken of late on the a few interesting topics that we're going to go over today. Obviously, for those of you that are watching this, ImpressioN is eating his food. That's not an issue as far as I'm concerned. He's, I feel like you're mid-scrims or something like that. You've taken a bit of time out of your night to jump on. So we're going to try and blast through the topics today. We don't have a whole lot of time. We're really going to just try and speed run things. Just to try and get an episode out, because I think it's been like 3 weeks now since we last did one. Anyway, Pilski, look, let's just jump straight into things and kick it off with what has been, I feel like, the biggest news of late, and something that we did discuss on the last show, which was the fact that ROG Masters is back, and we were quite excited for ROG Masters to be back. And unfortunately, it seems like maybe our excitement was a little bit misplaced, which is something that ImpressioN can go into in a little bit. But just to give everyone a bit of a TLDR as to what's been going on here and what it seems like, at least to me, although I haven't been following the situation too in depth, is basically that ROG Masters is back. And this is obviously one of the OG Asian CS tournaments where, you look to like Extremesland and ROG Masters, at least in my mind, as the big ones. And it's kind of come back in a way which we thought was going to be kind of interesting, but now there's a few problems that are starting to crop up based on the nationality rules that are in the rule set. And the TLDR really is that NG Esports and a couple of other teams, from my understanding, are actually unable to compete in this tournament. They're not able to play in the qualifiers or whatever it may be, just because they've got all these multinational rosters. I think another one of the teams that was affected is LZ coming through from Brunei. So I don't know what you've heard, Pilski, if you've heard anything else from ROG Masters, or if there's anything that you want to say here before we let ImpressioN unleash. But from my perspective, it's a little bit disappointing, because this is one of the tournaments that I have fond memories of. I first started casting Asian CSGO with ROG Masters, and so I sort of thought when it came back, I was super keen actually to see it. And unfortunately, it's kind of not really resulted in anything apart from drama.
I mean, like, honestly, I didn't get to do any of the ROG Masters events. The most memorable thing that I have is the Kevin getting a takeaway margarita story in terms of, working ROG Masters. I think that was ROG Masters anyway. So I'd love to pick your guys' brains on whether these nationality rules were a thing back then, because they are definitely a thing that I've heard talked about, in looking at some of those 1.6 tournaments with the WCG tournaments, having a chat a while ago to some of those guys that have played in some of those, and the nationality rulings that come with those. People even back then thought it was a bit silly. You would often see some top teams sort of excluded. And that's, talking about a healthy European 1.6 team. You would see top teams excluded, unable to play for big amounts of prize money, big amounts of prestige. But forget about a really, really healthy, saturated, 1.6 European scene, or a bit of a, global sort of tournament where they have people qualifying from all over the world. We're here in, the Asian CS 2021 era. So it's the era where, obviously Valorant is a big thing. People are sort of struggling for player bases in a lot of these countries where they're given some of these slots. And at the end of the day, I think the general sentiment in the community at the moment is just try to get as many of the teams, and the good teams in particular, who are still putting in the effort in chances at prize money and things to play for and tournaments and chances to improve, because the more people that you exclude, you're actively hurting a scene that's already struggling due to multiple factors at the moment.
Yeah, indeed. And just before I give this one to you, ImpressioN, I do want to go through the the list of slots that are available and why that's actually a problem. Obviously, even outside of the fact that there are these nationality rules, which I don't necessarily agree with in general, but more so the problems arise, I think, when you look at where the slot allocations are going, right? Okay, you got 3 slots for Australia, which I think is fine, to be fair. I think Australia can field 3 pretty decent teams. But then you look at 3 slots for India, Indonesia, Japan, South Korea, and Thailand. Now, I know for a fact that at least 2 of those regions don't really have teams anymore. And probably all 4 of those other regions, apart from Australia, can't really field 3 super competitive teams. Then you've got 2 slots for Cambodia, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Vietnam. Again, the same issue starts to crop up, right? You might be getting a couple of decent teams, maybe from Singapore, maybe from Malaysia. I see them sort of popping around every now and then. But the reality is that a lot of these regions just don't have teams or aren't going to be able to send a proper representative, even a slot for Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, right? So that's fine. No issues really necessarily with that. But my issue is that there are a lot of slot allocations going towards regions that don't have teams or don't have competitive teams. And then, especially, you're looking at teams like, all the teams in Mongolia, all the teams in China not being able to qualify through to this tournament, which is a big deal because these are the 2 best regions right now in Asian Counter-Strike, and all these multinational rosters not being able to qualify through to the tournament. When you're going to say, okay, we want the fucking... Who even knows who plays in a team from Hong Kong or a team from Sri Lanka or a team from Cambodia? I'm sure there are teams, yes, but is it fair for those teams to get a slot through when someone like, for example, NG Esports can't qualify? Okay, let's take a step back, okay? There is the argument, okay, maybe it's a tournament to do with the nationality rule. Maybe that's something that they want to integrate. But is that the best way to run a tournament in Asia right now? And I don't think that is necessarily the case. So to go back on your question, Pilsky, of as to whether or not that was a thing in the past, and I think you can correct me here if I'm wrong, Impression. I think there was something to do with a nationality qualifier. Like there was an ANZ qualifier, for example. But I don't recall how things were when it came to Asia. Like, was there a China qualifier, a Mongolia qualifier, etc., or was it an SEA qualifier and or a Greater Asia qualifier? Do you remember?
Well, as far as I know, if we put aside all the like WSG or WCG or TWC, all the national qualifier stuff, generally you're looking at a region. Asia is a region as a whole. And then what they would do is do sub-region qualifiers. So probably like Southeast Asian qualifiers, Greater China qualifiers, and then like Oceanic, meaning like AUNZ qualifiers, right? And this makes kind of like the most sense. And also like East Asian qualifiers, if I recall correctly. And this makes like the most sense for our region back then, because there were strong teams coming in from each region. And the slot allocations were like, it was smart. It was a good idea. But I think like, as far as I know, this entire like format of like having national qualifiers are so outdated. Sub-region ones are the ones that makes the most sense, because then like you put like Mongolia, Japan, and South Korea together in the sub-region, and then they just kind of fight it out, right? So it makes the most sense. And this is what they are not doing, which is completely like unacceptable, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at ROG Masters 2017, and this looks like a fucking awesome tournament.
Yeah.
We got Splice, like the American Splice team. We got Firepower, Greyhound, Tyloo, Gambit, Vega Squadron. None of those SEA teams in there. I don't know if I'm looking at like one of these sort of SEA tournaments. We got main tournament. You got America's, APAC, China. So if I go into what should I go into, boys? APAC,
so basically,
maybe?
what you should do here is, for anyone that is interested, just look up ROG Masters 2017. Find the Liquipedia page. The way these tournaments used to work, Pilsky, is what you're initially describing there was the grand final. Like this was the eventual global final of the ROG Masters circuit, and then under subsequent headers, ROG Masters existed in America, ROG Masters existed in APAC, ROG Masters existed in China, and each of these regions also had a qualifier, right? So you have the APAC qualifier, which ANZ region can qualify to, SEA region can qualify to, these kinds of regions. And then there was a separate Chinese qualifier, there was a separate Middle East qualifier, and then the winner of each of one of those, which was were at least, I think the majority of which were LANs, by the way, would then qualify for the main tournament, which was also a LAN. So you had your LAN finals in America, you had your LAN finals in, I think, Manila, which was where the APAC finals were, then there was the China finals, then there was the Middle East finals. And from all of those, then the best team from that particular spot would go to the global final, which is why you see Greyhound, for example, in that main qualifier. They won against, you know, the likes of Five Power and fucking whoever else was in the APAC region at the time.
Right.
Meneski, Signature, Atletico, these kinds of teams.
I mean, I'm looking down some of these qualifiers. I'm seeing Avicii Gaming with Freeman from Hong Kong. I'm seeing a Yuya team with Fates and Vovkin from Russia, and I'm seeing Bentet in Tyloo. I'm seeing a Taiwanese player on a Chinese team. Then I'm going across to APAC, and I'm seeing a 5-power roster, which is like 2 Mongolians, a Thai player, and 2 Chinese players. Like, I don't know where these rules came from, but I'm going through this old tournament that looks fucking awesome. Like, I would kill to cast a tournament like this, and you know, I'm not seeing a lot of these rules.
All right, so maybe this is where we let ImpressioN have his 2 cents, because I think maybe you can help us unravel what's going on here. I mean, it's a situation where it seems like ROG Masters of 2017 is a different beast to ROG Masters that we're getting in 2021. Is there any connection apart from the name that you're aware of?
Honestly, I feel like there's no connection at all, aside from the branding. Because as far as I know, I played in ROG Masters 2016, and I believe the person who was in charge of that, I think, was Kamin, which is like, you know, quite a well-known guy in the Asian region, in fact. And I guess like it has something to do with a bit of like I think they got ESL as like the TO. I'm not sure.
I think ESL did run it, so it was like
I
recall it was like ESL
I believe
Asia.
you guys were there as well, right? So
I was there. Pili wasn't, but yeah, it was like
yeah.
ESL Asia that was running it, but then it was with assistance from the ESL Australia office, which is where Kamin sort of came in. So I think he was doing adminning, and then there was people who were like you know a lot of the IO Esports guys. I'm not sure if you're keeping up with them, ImpressioN, but people like Oren, Philibert, and stuff like that. Those kinds of guys were sort of kicking around. I think they went to Meneski. I mean, or there was like this weird ESL/Meneski partnership in Asia, and it was like them running ROG Masters for Asus, I assume. But I don't know who's running it now. So what's going on there, I guess?
Well, I guess like honestly, the biggest thing that ROG Masters has, like, the only similarity I've seen in all these ROG Masters is that like ROG Masters doesn't like give you like a clear line of communication to the TO that they hired. And right now, I don't even know if ROG Masters themselves has hired a TO, or they're just like pulling rules and formats out their asses and just like putting it on there, and they're just like, okay, let's just go 3 slots Indonesia then, where Indonesia has no fucking like pro Counter-Strike teams, you know. So it's like it's insanity to look at. I look at like the registration list and the slot allocation, and there's no China, there's no Mongolia, and then I'm completely like, I'm baffled. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how can you, like, even if you want to like cunt over like NG Esports where we have like 5 nationalities, okay, I can kind of accept that, but no Mongolia, no China. That's like, that's what kind of like pisses me off, because like they don't do their work before like putting up like you know, the slot allocations, and they don't like look at the region. I think like they do like a event not for the benefit of esports, but it's more or less, I mean, of course they're a company, understandably they have like ROIs and KPIs to hit and shit like that, and they're doing it, you know, obviously to promote Asus, but the way that they're doing it is just like, you know,
what's
doing
the
a tournament just
KPI?
for the
Running
sake
a
of it.
shit tournament? Like, I don't understand. Like, I
Yeah,
don't get it. What
exactly.
KPI are you hitting by fucking doing this?
It keeps going back to that
Some bloke
discussion.
just came up. He's like, "All right, here's our KPI. Okay, I want you to try and find teams from at least 12 different countries. That's all you got to do this tournament. That's it."
But
And he's like, "I can fucking do this. Here we go."
it's exactly like what you always say, Pilski. It's like, if you're going to spend all this money running this tournament, you know, why the fuck are you going to do it poorly when it's so easy to do it correctly? And the thing about
this wouldn't even work in 2017, dude. Like, that's the thing. Even like Extremesland, like I'll give fair dues to Extremesland. Like, for example, they would have some of these kind of like random qualifiers thrown in there to be like, okay, let's give one of these sort of minor countries a chance to chuck a team together and see what they can do. And like, you know, maybe we get like a Taiwanese team or something like that in there. But, you know, I'm watching, you know, the 4th or the 5th best Australian team beating the Taiwanese team, and it's like, if you're going to give like all of these minor countries an opportunity to play in the tournament when they've shown that they're not quality, even when it was like peak Asian CS in the region and things like that, and you're not going to give like the best, like countries that are showing sort of excellence in Counter-Strike still, even despite all the challenges. Like, I don't see what the point is.
Yeah. It sort of just keeps going back to that. Why would you run it if you're going to do it poorly? I mean, when you look at it, it just feels like it's tarnishing the brand that ROG Masters had in the past, you know, because I have ROG Masters up there with Extremesland. In fact, I probably would have even maybe put ROG Masters higher in terms of like quality than Extremesland, because you had LAN qualifiers for all of these regions, and you also had European teams playing, you know, some of these teams coming through from CI. So it might even actually have been, and I would say it is, or was, a better tournament than what Extremesland was/is. Who knows if Extremesland is going to be coming back, just purely because of the strength of the field. And now we're coming through to a situation where you're trying to run a tournament for the Asia region, and you're actively denying the two best regions in Asia from playing in the tournament. I'm really not sure what's going on there. So, look, what is, in your opinion, Impression, the one fundamental, or not maybe one, but what is the main issue here with the way that this has been sort of handled by ROG Masters, and what would you recommend as a fix for it? Because I know you've talked about this a little bit on Twitter.
I honestly feel like ROG Masters is like not being held accountable for what they want to do, in a sense where it's like they, like, for example, like it's been like it's quite an outcry from the community that the rule set sucks, obviously. And up till now there's no like proper like statement or anything from them, like what do they actually want to do with this event. Are they doing an event that wants to like showcase the pinnacle of Counter-Strike in Asia as a region, or are they doing an event like, you know, are they like targeting like some like a consumer base or something? It's just like nothing. And then the biggest problem is, I think, like I honestly do not know if they have hired a TO to properly take charge of all the rule set and format and rulebook and everything. But if they have done so, I think like they need to listen to the TO, because when we have like correspondence with like the people that was talking to us, that guy that was in charge of talking to us just basically, I believe what he was doing is just passing on the message. He wasn't in charge of making decisions or anything like that. He was just passing on the message. Oh, actually, we can't do this. So it showcased like it showcased to us like that they weren't even sure of their own like rulebook. And I mean, like, that just sucks, right? The person that you're talking to can't help you at all, except for us, right? The people in charge of him, what's going on. And then if we try to look for someone else to talk to, that's like above his like so-called like above his pay grade, the people who are in charge of him, that we can't get a clear line of communication at all as well. So at the end of the day, I think like the biggest thing that they have to do is communicate properly, which honestly I don't think they do. Because like we don't know who to talk to try and help them change the rule set. And it doesn't seem like they want to change the rule set. And that's just like,
you're asking to talk to their manager, and you can't get onto the manager. Can't go to Karen mode, dude.
I went full on Karen mode. We all went full on Karen mode in NG Esports. Nothing worked.
I mean, I saw the screenshots. If anyone's interested, just go to ImpressioN's Twitter and you'll be able to see some of the discussions. It seems pretty strange to me, you know. But anyway, I guess it is what it is. The end result, though, Impression is, I assume you're not playing. I haven't heard an update.
Yeah, there is no update.
No Singapore superstar team being thrown together at the last second.
Yeah.
Oh man,
bring Boot back for one last ride. You know, that's all I'm saying. Everyone's gone to Valorant.
Yeah.
Impression can't play anyway. Let's fucking do it.
Oh my god.
One tournament.
That was the suggestion that came from the admin.
Yeah,
hey,
I saw that. It's like
change your players.
Change your players. Like,
get
bro!
3 guys of the same majority. I'm like, what? How do you manage to think of such a solution when we're telling you that your region set are wrong, the national qualifiers are bad? You don't even let, like, for example, a Mongolian player to play in like a South Korean qualifier if they have 4 South Koreans. So that's what's basically happening to Team LZ. They have 4 Malaysians, 1 Bruneian. The Bruneian cannot play.
That's
because
fucking
there is no Brunei qualifier.
Yeah.
Right? He cannot be registered. Right? That is so stupid. It just doesn't make sense, man.
It especially doesn't make sense when you've got a core roster of 4 players. Like, I mean, I can understand if you're having nationality rules and you're like, okay, it needs to be core 3.
Yeah.
Fine. Maybe. Probably not fine, in my opinion, but fine, I guess. But if it's... Whatever. Anyway, look. If there's one thing I wanted to say, and I assume probably no one from ROG Masters is actually watching this, but if there is anyone watching this, it's just all you need to do is save Asian Counter-Strike, right? This is the kind of tournament that Asian CS needs. This is why I was so excited to see it. I was like, ROG Masters is back. That's fucking sick. For people that are not from the Asian region, they probably don't understand how big and how important this tournament actually was in the Asian CS calendar. And yet, you bring it back, you do it poorly, all of a sudden you think internally, why the fuck did we even bother with CSGO? This is shit. No one's playing. No one cares. Everyone hates us. Let's go do another title. And it's a snowball effect. There you go. Fucking CS is dead. If you just do it correctly, people are going to come back. People are going to try and play. People like me are going to be keen. So I want to see ROG Masters back to its former glory. I want to see 2016, 2017 ROG Masters. But what we're getting right now is not that. So
Yep.
if anyone's involved, wants to reach out, I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm sure there are any number of people that are happy to have a conversation and try to figure out what some of the issues might be. But unlikely as that is. Anyway, well, look, we did say we're trying to speed run this episode, and we've already gone 10 minutes over on the first topic. So we're going to have to move on pretty quickly here. So we are into topic number 2, which is when Xiosage has announced his retirement, which is interesting, you know, because he's definitely been someone that's stuck around for a long, long time in the Asian region. He was the IGL for Invictus Gaming, Pilski's favorite team in the whole wide world. I don't know how you can really replace Xiosage, to be honest, in that Invictus roster. But Pilski, I'll let you go first because I feel like ImpressioN's going to have a few things to weigh in on here, and I don't want him to steal all your thunder. So what have you got to say on the matter?
I mean, he's had like an interesting career. It's not just like Chinese teams that he's played for. He's had a couple of like mixed teams and stuff like that as well. And I guess that's something to be impressed with to some extent, you know, like someone who, even if you can't chuck together 5 Chinese boys and get some results, you still try to actually go outside your means and form like an English-speaking team, grab some Mongolian players, grab a Thai player here or there, still try to put the pieces together, and do a pretty good run of things. Like there were times where, you know, he was able to chuck a mixed team together and, you know, actually compete at the top level of Asia, which a lot of Asian teams try to do or have tried to do for a long time and failed to do so, even with some decent rosters. So that's not really something you can fuck with. He can IGL teams to top 4 in Asia, whether they're English speaking or Chinese speaking, which is pretty good. He was always a pretty decent player as far as I'm concerned, never really like bottoming the scoreboard or whatever, which for an IGL, I mean, is not too bad. It's not like any of his teams were super tactically deep or anything like that for the most part, though. I always felt like his teams were usually pretty loose in terms of the structure. Sometimes they would surprise me, you know, when they played a T-half or something like that, or like a Vertigo. I remember sometimes Invictus were pretty sick, or, you know, sometimes they would come out the gates with some interesting strategies if they put a bit of prep work in. That being said, though, I mean, I don't want to... the guy's retiring, so I don't want to hark on him too much, but there were definitely a lot of dubious results in teams that Xiosage played for. That's all I'm going to say. And, you know, end of the day, it's sad for the scene because it's pretty clear to me that he definitely has a lot of experience and he definitely can lead teams to sort of top 4 status in the region. So that's kind of bad in terms of like losing that leadership and losing some of that knowledge transfer and expertise and experience. But also, I'm not going to miss them randomly losing to Global Esports on Inferno to double orbs without throwing a single flashbang or piece of utility on the T side of Inferno. So there you go.
There you go indeed. ImpressioN, are you a Xiosage fan? Are you sad to see him going?
I mean, considering all that he's done for Asian CS, yeah, I think so. But at the same time, I mean, like, obviously he retires for a reason, respect that. It's like professional to professional. I feel like I think the funniest thing was how I saw the news. It was actually on WeChat. Someone like took a screenshot because obviously this news comes out first on 5E, which is a Chinese site, right? And then the top comment on the news article of Xiosage retiring was he has thrown too many matches. And if he doesn't retire now, he's going to jail. So I saw that, I'm like, what?
I mean, I
so
messaged somebody about him retiring, and I was like, No, sorry, I didn't message someone about him retiring. I was standing. I'm not gonna out them or whatever, and I'm sure this guy wouldn't even care if I did say that it was him who said this. But I remember retweeting, like, I was gonna quote tweet, I think, what you posted there, impression about him retiring, be like, "Oh, really sad loss for the Chinese scene. You know, they're lacking RGLs as it is." And then whoever I'm standing next to just goes, "He's fucking thrown so many matches. It's time to get out." And I thought about it. I'm like,
It's
I'm not
just
going to send
funny.
this tweet anymore, you know? Like, I don't know, you know, I have no evidence about it, but that, you know, just the fact that I have such mixed feelings about it kind of says it all, you know?
I mean, like, my opinion is just that obviously I'm not gonna speculate on what he has done in his career. It's just funny to me that that's the general consensus that people like some of the people have. And I mean, like, kudos to him. Like, he did do a lot of damage in like the Asian region. Despite what everything like Fiske said about, you know, mixed teams and all that, like, still played like good fundamental individual Counter Strike, meshed it together in a team and did good, like, took good results. So I'm kind of, I guess I'm looking forward to like who's gonna replace him, because it's big shoes to fill.
Yeah, that was actually the next question. I don't know if you guys have anyone in mind, but like I said, I don't think there really is an obvious replacement for Xiosage.
I practiced them twice after the Xiosage retirement post, and I saw two different players like trialing. So I guess like
Still undecided.
yeah, I think they're still like working on it, I guess.
I mean, there's no direct replacement for him. There isn't anybody that fills his shoes, I don't
I
think.
guess the most likely person would be Freeman, I guess.
Okay.
IG is a big organization, has money.
Well, what's
to take
happening
the
with
bone out
Freeman, though,
Tyloo,
impression?
maybe?
Because we haven't seen anything from him in
I forgot Freeman
than a year.
existed, mate.
I don't know what's that. I don't like personally talk to him, but I did see him on the server a while back, so could be him. I guess, like, honestly.
Definitely would be interesting. Anyway, that's probably a topic that we'll discuss in the future when we do find out a little bit more info. But in the interests of time, we are going to move through this one again. And our next point of discussion is the Funspark announcement that came out today. So, got to give a quick shout out to Funspark, say thank you very much for doing your announcement before we recorded the episode rather than after we recorded the episode, because that is something that happens a lot. So the announcement came out, and it was that Funspark has, or is going to put on a tournament that has a $630,000 prize pool over the course of 2021. Now, that's a bit of an inflated figure because it's like a bunch of tournaments. You know, it'd be like if the Dreamhack circuit said, we have a $1 million prize pool, or ESL Pro League for the 2 seasons was like, you know, put them together. So it's basically a bunch of different tournaments that have smaller prize pools that amount to $630,000. But the great news is, obviously for us, that it is a tournament operator from the Asian region, and it has an Asian component. So there's a possibility that this could actually be something really, really cool for the Asia region. From what I understand, the way it works is you split things into 2 regions. There's the European region, there's the Asian region, both of which are starting on March 29th and running basically all the way through to the playoffs. And from those playoffs, you qualify the teams through, and then eventually we get to a finals, like a global finals, which is where the European teams and the Asian teams are going to go up against each other, and they're going to play off for that, what is apparently a $300,000 prize pool in the Funspark Ulti Grand Final, which is intended to be a LAN, as far as I understand. Obviously, still sort of getting a bit of information through from this. Now, if you have a look at the links that they've been posting, or on the HLTV article, you can see some of the teams that have been invited, and there's quite a few decent ones coming through from Europe. Probably won't touch too much on that, to be honest, but more importantly for us from the Asia region, you know, you got Tyloo, Wings Up, Linvision, Invictus, blah, blah, blah. So there's a few pretty decent teams coming through the ranks there. But one notable missing team in that Vici is not invited. And based on what I can see, I'm not sure. Is there a qualification path for Chinese teams, or do they have to get invited?
They like it.
Because there's 4 Southeast Asia qualifier slots and 4 East Asia qualifier slots. But from what I understand, and again, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Impression, East Asia doesn't include China. Normally it includes Korea, Japan, and maybe Mongolia. But doesn't normally China has like a China qualifier that is its own thing. So I would have to imagine, what, Vici's not taking part in this tournament, which seems ludicrous to me.
Well, honestly, I I'm actually like a bit like shocked that Vici isn't part of this as well.
Hmm.
Like as far as I know, the Southeast Asian qualifier is supposed to be mixed with the East Asian one. That was the first like initial news that I heard. But now now that they released this news, is like completely different. And I don't know where Vici is. Honestly, I don't know if they also have like a qualifier. I don't think they did like a qualifier for like the Chinese slots. So I mean,
This honestly just looks like they said no to the tournament.
yeah,
Like
it
that's
kind
what it
of just
looks like to
that,
me.
yeah.
But why would you say no to that tournament? That's like probably the
mean,
best tournament you're going to get in Asia this year, quite frankly. Unless they
it's
have
kinda
something
hard to
else
say,
lined up
right?
where they're going to
Yeah.
go overseas and play in fucking who knows what. But they haven't.
yeah,
like,
that could be.
even for example, if we didn't talk about it, but ESL Pro League, the Asian slot got taken by one of the European teams because they couldn't get an Asian team over to ESL Pro League. And I have to assume it would have been Vici. So
It was, yeah, I think so, right?
I think there was it was like Tyloo and Vici were tied for points or something when we were talking about it last episode.
Right.
Yeah, so I like Vici has always like said no to some tournaments. Honestly, like I remember they also put out of some other tournament like for example like WDNMD for like one instance, like these tournaments generally Vici don't play for.
Okay, but that's a bit different
I'm
though,
not sure
because
why. So,
that's
yeah.
like, okay, that's a $50,000 tournament that is just domestically for Asia, right?
Yep.
But this is, again,
This is
630,000
global, right? So, yeah.
is a big inflation of the number. But if I just look at what money you can get out of the Asia region, it's $30,000 per tournament for Europe, $15,000 per tournament for Asia, with that qualification spot to the playoffs, which is a $150,000 spot. And then for the grand final, it's a $300,000 tournament. So,
I mean, it's a lot of money.
it's a lot of money, you know, especially for the Asia region, even though the qualifiers itself is not a huge amount. But when you think about it as a qualifier, 15,000 for a qualifier is good money. Normally, you don't get paid anything for a qualifier. So,
Yep.
I don't know. Are you playing in this, or are you intending to play in this? I assume you can.
Yeah, we are going to be playing the Open qualifier for Southeast Asia. Which is actually honestly in like 5 days. I think.
Yeah.
Oh no, this Saturday. This Saturday is the qualifier, I think.
It's pretty soon.
So,
pretty soon.
Yeah, it's really soon. Yeah.
Haven't heard anything about a broadcast though, so interested to see where that's going to go. Because if I'm going to be a cynic, I'm going to say it feels to me like it's going to end up being one of those things that's like broadcast on DouYu or Huya or whatever, and there's like no English presence. Or maybe if there is an English presence, it's not properly publicized. It's not on HLTV. The tweets are going to go getting buried because Funspark Ulti, quite frankly, doesn't have much of a footprint on Twitter. I mean, if you go and find their Twitter, I think it's like 200 followers or something like that. So
Yep.
I would like to see it if it's actually going to be done properly from a broadcast perspective and have a decent English broadcast, because it's one of those things where like this could be a really good tournament, and it probably will be a really good tournament. But if no one knows about it, what is the point?
It's just like it's that classic thing that reminds me of all the Chinese tournaments, like when we were watching Weibo Cup and stuff like that, just kind of like float by, and you look at like some of these Chinese tournament organizers and the amount of cash that they put into the prize pool, and it's like, bruh, just take a little bit of that money out, just a little bit, just have broadcasts. A lot of people watch your tournament if you do it correctly. Maybe
just get a
just
10
pay
or 15 grand.
Pay someone who knows what they're doing and knows the scene and stuff like that to do it remotely. Like this guy in the middle here, you know, it's not that much money compared to the amount that you're pumping into the bloody prize pool anyway. So
well, that's what I think about this. Like, you're looking at that, it's $630,000 for the prize pool plus whatever logistics they've got involved with tournament operating and everything. So it's probably $1 million plus just to get this tournament going. And if it's going to be a LAN, then even more.
10 blokes on Twitch.
Yeah, that or it's just going to be on the Chinese platforms, which is like, obviously that's probably where they're expecting to get most of their viewership, and that is where the tournament operator resides. So makes sense. That's who they're targeting. But, you know, it's targeting Europe as well. There's European qualifiers and SEA as well. So I feel like having an English broadcast would probably be a pretty good idea. And it really wouldn't cost that much. You know, you could probably slide away 15, 20 grand and have a really good broadcast. You know, you almost probably not a studio level broadcast. I feel like a studio level broadcast for that amount of money, probably not quite going to get there, but definitely some good quality bedroom broadcast, depending on how many days it is. But anyway, look, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes because this feels like, okay, with all the bad news that's been happening within the Asia region, finally a bit of good news and finally something that we've been talking about on Geographically Challenged where a tournament operator that's endemic to the region is actually hosting a really big tournament. So I really hope it goes well. So I got to say that and put that out there and we'll support it any way that we possibly can. Obviously, we'll be talking about it on Geographically Challenged and hope to finally see you playing in your first relevant tournament impression.
Yeah, I mean, I hope to see some of the games rather than just reading the results off Wikipedia like I did for the likes of like Weibo Cup and things like that. But you can't control any of that. I'm sure there was like I'm looking at the scorelines, I'm looking at some of the performances in Weibo Cup, like so many awesome games that I'm like just watching the scorelines for. So that was a bit depressing. Didn't get to see any of those.
I mean, Funspark seems to be doing like quite a couple of good events. Hopefully they kind of raise like the TO standard in Asia. Or at least go on par with like ESL or Dreamhack or whatever. And at least like do some good shit. Yeah, looking forward to playing in it as well. Hopefully we do good as well. Yeah.
Hopefully, a lot of hopefullys, but we will cover it when we hear a bit more about it. When we get to the next episode of Geographically Challenged, God knows when that will be. We'll continue to blast through a few of these topics. The next one is Tiger parting ways with their org. So it seems to me like what has happened here is the org doesn't want to continue with the team, or the team doesn't want to continue with the org. Either way, they're just splitting. And it's not so much that Tiger as a team is leaving CS or splitting up or anything like that. It's just that the org is no longer continuing. Again, Impression, you're a bit more boots on the ground than Pilsky and I are when it comes to these things. So maybe you've heard a few other rumblings. But from what I can see, it seems like they want to continue playing as a team. Have you been playing against them in scrims, or have you been seeing them around in any of the tournaments you're playing in, or what have you heard?
Yeah. They're definitely still playing. They're sticking together. I think Tiger as an organization just basically disbanded. I'm not sure why they did that. I believe like partially is because business in like mainland China and outside of it is like really like it's hard to make it relevant. So Tiger, as far as I know, was bootcamping in like Mongolia. So like logistically speaking, they can't be in China. They can't attend like events or whatsoever, or do like product stuff. So I think that's a bit tough from a business point of view. So I guess like understandable that Tiger disbands. Really sad for that team because obviously they're getting paid and everything, and maybe a little bit of motivational dip for that team. But they're still sticking together. They're still playing like good Counter Strike. We just like practiced them yesterday. I believe like with the events that are coming, with like Funspark RMRs coming soon as well, should be hopefully just like get to showcase more of themselves, because I mean they are like an established name, and maybe someone picks them up. We don't know. But just glad to see them continue on in CS, I guess.
Frog with Danish Joe says in the chat that he might be crazy, but there was news of Mongols potentially returning a few weeks back, and I think I heard the same thing. But that was with. Who was that with? NCL and
the Black Company roster or whatever it was.
Yeah, some of the old Black Company players, something to do with that. So I'm not sure that is to do with Tiger, but it may end up being, that, hey, if Tiger's on offer, just get Tiger. It's probably the best team in the region. Maybe D13. I don't know. That's a discussion for a little bit later.
I think Tiger's probably better, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I would say so.
I haven't seen either of them play in a while, so...
Yeah, so that's the news for Tiger. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot really there to talk about, but just keeping up to date. The other, I guess, unfortunate news that we've heard is that Bren seems to be leaving CS, and I don't know whether or not that's just the org Bren and the team is continuing on, but from what I've been seeing in the Philippines region, it seems like there's less and less likelihood that team will continue in Counter-Strike. It seems like there's way more opportunities in Valorant, and it kind of seems like a bit of an inevitability more than anything else. Have you got any extra insight on this one, Impression, as to what is happening with the ex-Bren roster?
I heard that they are gonna play ROG together. Like they're gonna take ROG as their last event, something along those lines. I believe.
Well, I guess they can, right? Because they're all from the same region.
Yeah, of course, right? I mean, benefits them. Derek, I believe he's gonna look for another team. I heard like Papi Chulo might be retiring. Like I don't know what's like the general consensus that they have in their camp, but probably gonna split up. Really sad to hear, I guess. But at the same time, like I feel like Bren has always been like the staple name of like unfortunately just falling short from getting first like
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And that's like really, I mean, like I'm looking at this like, I respect those guys as players, as people, as professionals. But the results, they speaks for themselves. So yeah, I guess like they probably split up. I don't know if they're gonna go into like another title or they're gonna stay on in Counter Strike. I know Derek's staying on, and that's great because Derek's like, I think, probably the most hardworking and smartest player from the Philippines right now.
Mm.
I mean, plugging it for him. Hopefully, he gets a good team. But for Bren, there's really not much to say, right? They haven't really achieved that much. They have shown promise, never really like managed to show like go to like a full potential mode, where it's like they go like first in like a DreamHack or ESL or something. But sad to see. But let's see where they end up. Like I'm still hopeful and like praying for them to go to a good place.
I mean, it just seems
like all of them,
like a symptom of the same issues that we've been seeing in other regions. Like, okay, whether or not they are competitive at the top end and whether or not they're potentially quote unquote a top 4 team or whatever, to still be seeing teams like that disappearing obviously means something, right? You've seen the Absolute guys move over to Valorant a long time ago. I would say Bren was kind of on the same caliber as them, maybe a little bit below, but it just means that there are not that many opportunities left in CS for those middle tier teams, right? In Asian CS at the very least. If you want to make it in Asian CS, you need to be at the top. You need to be competing in the top 8 tournaments. There's nothing really left for the guys underneath that. So that's the main concern for me, and that's why I sort of continue to talk about these teams. Even though it's not that relevant, right? It's still symptomatic of what's happening to the scene, I think.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that. I think, as far as I understand it, there's been a bit of a resurgence of the Filipino scene in Valorant, and it's actually like reasonably active. At least I'm looking at like the SEA rankings and stuff like that on like the leaderboard, and I'm seeing a bunch of Filipino blokes in there and like Indonesian guys and stuff like that. Guys who like I'm not seeing them play Counter Strike anymore, so at least they're like playing some game as a competitive outlet. You love to see that. I would sort of agree with what ImpressioN said. I think Bren have had long enough to prove their excellence, and I think that they have proved that they are just a decent team. I don't think they have enough talent to be able to contest at the top, and I think the way that the Asian scene is heading now is that I feel like we're going to go into like this period of like feast or famine almost, where like you will still see some of these top tournament organizers providing spots for Asia. But if you're not winning the qualifiers for those spots and you're not going over towards those overseas competitions there, and you're back in Asia and there's not much happening, you're going to be in a really rough spot. And so if you're a team like Bren, which I felt like they make it to the end of the open qualifier and then they either fall short or they go into the closed qualifier and they just get outclassed a little bit. I think it's almost better for them to try to replicate what maybe, like you said, an Absolute's doing, where I feel like, I would agree they were sort of in a similar position. And now that you see that Valorant's a bit more regionalized and you get an opportunity, you'll fight for like the best in your country in some tournament cases, and then you move into like the region of Asia, and that's where you have an opportunity to go through like a Masters tournament. That's where a team like Bren, I mean, just going past the concept of a team like Bren, like I see the guys in the Philippines, I've always characterized like you had those one mixed teams of those guys who were like fucking insane online, like the Dispenser and like Dubstep, or like some of these guys who just like you'd look at the HLTV stats and they'd be like a 1.4 rating or something ridiculous. And then you had Bren, who was like the complete opposite of that shit. They were like ultra structured and they seemed like they worked hard and they played proper Counter-Strike. So I almost feel like if you had some kind of synthesis of those two things in a team together with players from the Philippines, you could almost give Valorant a bit of a run and try to have it go in Southeast Asia a bit.
Yeah, definitely. So that's unfortunate for CS, but it seems like it's been good news across the board for at least competitive shooters in the Philippines region. One more thing to touch on is D13. Again, we sort of talked about them a little bit last week. That was 3 weeks ago. Last episode, I should say, where they're playing over in Europe in the ESEA Open. Just to keep up to date with how things are going for them. They're actually in 6th place now, and they have a win-loss record of 14-2, which is pretty good, pretty respectable. I I did see a couple of tweets about them having a couple of forfeit wins based on some time zone stuff, which is potentially inflating those numbers. But overall, it seems like it's going pretty nicely for D13. So not really a whole lot to sort of speak to there, apart from to just sort of follow back up on that discussion from last time. I guess, Impression, do you have any thoughts you want to weigh in on with them playing over there? I mean, it's something that I feel like, the way that it's working out right now for D13, it surprises me that more teams, particularly from Mongolia, actually haven't done it already, even despite the fact that I think it's something like 100 ping or whatever that they're playing on. But, if you can make it work, it probably is better than the practice you can get right now in Asia.
Yeah, I think it requires like a very specific ISP to get like good like 100 ping to a German server. I think something along those lines. With them doing this and people knowing and hearing more about it, hopefully more Mongolian teams just go ahead and do that as well. I think it's not a bad thing to do, because honestly, I feel like the D13 of now and today has a bit more depth as a team. When I play against them in practice or whatever, it's not just like any and score just like going crazy with like AWP or Deagle and then just like winning rounds off of like pure skill, or Tamir getting like that good read and then getting like 4Q on like whatever, like the classic D13 type of play. It feels like they have a bit more depth now. They have like some structure to fall back on, more so than they did before. At least when I practice against them, it feels that way, and I hope to see them do good in the playoffs. I mean, in regards to like the forfeit win, I think it's only one game or maybe 2 games. So I don't really think like, I mean, like if you get as a team, it's your responsibility to handle your own scheduling anyways. So you can't really like fault time zone for missing a game, right? Like I mean, like that's kind of like a shit excuse in my opinion, at least. But D13 in ESEA should be good stuff, considering there's like good teams in it. Like if you look at the teams they're playing, you actually see like some like cool teams like Voivoda and then like Heart Legion inside there, like known players, so called. And it would be interesting to see them play against those guys. Yeah.
Someone's asking the question in chat. SoftyX says, are D13 good enough to cut it in EU Advanced? There's some legit teams in there. Just having a look down. Yeah, I mean, there are some legit teams in there. Look, I mean, I think they could compete, but to say that they would do well is another discussion.
Yeah, I think like ping is going to be a big thing. Different play style is going to be tough as well, but it would be nice to see anyway, like regardless of how it goes.
I guess it's a question of how far can they go.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, I like the concept. Like the pessimist in me says, like, so what though? Like there are some good teams in Open, but they're only there because they want to try to get up into the upper leagues. So if that's what D13 is trying to do, and then maybe they can like somehow leverage, like, oh, we've gone from Open and we've grinded our way into Advanced after a couple of seasons on playing on shit ping, and now we go to Europe and we play a season over there and try to actually give it a crack. That's where I see the pieces coming together. I'm like, wow, this was a very good move that was sort of built up over time. But playing on 100 ping in Open against some like mediocre European teams, maybe you'll sometimes get a good game against a decent European team. It's good. It's probably better than what you can do in Asia. Get as much practice as you could get, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't really feel like it means a whole lot. And if they were to go to a league like Advanced, I think there's a lot of teams there, even in Open, like some of those names that you're mentioning. I think there's a lot of teams they're going to have a bit of a tough time with. But at least looking at the teams in Advanced right now, I feel like D13 could be a playoffs team for sure. It's just a question of like when they go, because that's the thing. These European leagues, I feel like you look at Open, you look at Advanced and leagues like that. They are the kind of leagues where it's like, for the most part, these are all teams D13 will beat. But then there's a couple of teams in there. There's always like a sprinkle of teams where it's like, this is actually a fucking legit team that actually pracs some of the good teams in Europe, and you will probably get fisted.
Yep.
At the end of the day, it's going to make them, I think, a force to be reckoned with in Asia, right? Because if they are still even just going over there and getting that kind of experience, no other Asian teams are really doing that outside of like maybe Tyloo and Vici when they do play overseas. Which at the moment is really not happening all that often. And the final thing to touch on before we do start to go to viewer questions is the Dreamhack Open June 2021, which is a tournament that obviously we've got no info on, basically. so far. I only actually heard about it because Bleh linked it to us. It's something, I guess. June 30th to July 4th. We haven't really got anything to say. I just thought it was worth mentioning, and it's something that we'll be keeping an eye on to see whether or not there'll be something to speak about when it comes to the Asian region. Kind of feels like at the moment we've been a bit starved, right? 3 months into the year, we've done Extremes Land, but there hasn't been anything from ESL. There hasn't been anything from Dreamhack. Funspark Ulti has just announced this tournament, so there's that news. But it seems to be a bit grim at the moment, so hopefully things are going to start to pick up when we get into the middle of the year, which is when things, to be fair, do normally kick off a little bit more. So I guess now we may as well move into viewer questions, of which today there is only one, unless anyone in the chat has any questions for us. We'll pick up as we go. This one from Sahas U on YouTube. He says, what is the possibility of Sangal Esports taking part in Asian RMR events since it would be easier for them to try and qualify? They play EU ESEA Premier, but one Middle East Extremes Land. Now, this is a team from Turkey, so it's a bit weird, right? It's kind of a discussion as to what you consider the Asian region, what you consider the European region, and where do those borders actually end and where do those borders start. So in my mind, I think it's hard to make an argument that a team from Turkey belongs in an Asian qualifier. I don't know what you guys think about that, but to me, it seems like that's probably that Turkey. To me, when I think Turkey, I think Europe more so than Asia.
Huh. I think like Turkey feels Europe to me, actually. Like, in fact, they're closer to the CIS region than they are to Asia. So, putting them in Asia would be like an absolute logistical shit show. Because the UAE pings like 100 to Singapore, and Turkey is like even further away from that. You ping like 140, probably with like 50%, like with like 20 laws or some shit. So it's not gonna be fun for them. And it's not gonna be fun for TOs as well, because then you get like the entire ping fairness argument, and that's that's a whole bag of worms, man. And you don't want to have to deal with that. So, even though like it would be cool to see like a team that's outside of like the main Asian region play in Asia, I don't want to see that happening because of the logistical things that would like basically screw up everybody's day.
I kind of agree with what Nick says. He says it's quite simple. You can't let politics get in the way of gaming regions. So at the end of the day, are they in the Asian region as far as ping is concerned? Do they fit within the demographic of X player pings this to Singapore? Because let's be real, Singapore, Hong Kong, these are the kinds of servers you're going to be playing on. Is that going to work for them? Versus, is it better for them ping-wise to play in Europe or ping-wise to play in CIS? I think that's just how you have to go about it. It's like, where's your closest neighboring region? They're in a bit of an unfortunate situation where they're kind of in the middle, right? They're almost in Europe, they're almost in CIS, they're almost in Asia, they're kind of almost even in Middle East, right? But they're not technically in any of them, really. So which one do you go to? I mean, there is the argument that, like, for example, Renegades was playing in NA, and they played in the Asian RMR tournaments, the Asian minors and that kind of thing. So you could always move and you could always fly to wherever it is, but
yeah,
I suppose there's that.
That's what I was kind of thinking as well. It's like, I was trying to think back. It's like, what minor did Space Soldiers play in? It was Europe, right? That wasn't Asia.
I think it might have been. It
I
definitely
don't
wasn't
remember
Asia.
there being Turkish teams in Asia minors.
Yeah.
Unless I'm tripping.
No.
Because they should have been up near the top of the Asian
Middle
minor.
Eastern teams, Israeli team.
Yeah, it was like NASA in terms of Middle Eastern teams.
Yeah,
And you would have Israeli teams, which now, again, Israel is like another one of those where it's like, yeah, it's pretty clear this doesn't make sense. You got Flames and bloody
and they're playing the
Euro teams.
As well, so
and then you have Turkish players playing in Euro mixes as well. So I think it's pretty clear, like, in terms of the players and which way they're trending. You even see Sangal in ESEA Premier, which, by the way, they're having a bit of a struggle at the moment. I'm covering EU ESEA Premier, and they're looking like they might be getting relegated pretty soon. So we'll see what's happening with them. But end of the day, I mean, it's already. I'm thinking to myself, okay, what Asia minor did they play in? I'm pretty sure it was Europe. I don't remember seeing them in Asia. I'm seeing bloody Xantares playing for a bloody German team and Walk6 playing for a European mix and things like that. And then they're playing in ESEA Premier Europe for Sangal. I'm pretty sure it's Europe, man. Like, I think the question kind of answers itself by watching which way they're all trending.
Yeah, fair enough. And then on to another question. Again, if you have one, drop it in the Twitch chat. We'll get to it quickly before we close the show. But we are about to, if there are no more questions. Softy says, how good could some of these Asian teams be if they got consistent EU prac and boot camp? Now, I mean, it's a question that we've sort of thrown around, and I feel like it's a bit of a difficult one to answer. You can never really say. But I feel like a team like Vici might be pretty good. I don't know about Tyloo. Who else might there be that could be pretty interesting if they were given a lot of practice? Yeah,
man.
I mean, I'd be interested to see like Vici or Tiger. I don't know, like, I want to say NG Esports impression, but like, I've got to be honest, I've literally watched one of your games, and it was in that fucking Thai domestic tournament, the first tournament you played, which I think
188
CBBK couldn't even play, or one of whoever you fucking had, I can't remember. Some X-Script couldn't play, and you had MYM playing for you, or something like that, and I was just like,
yeah.
it's not even really worth watching. And then I haven't really seen anything from NG Esports, so I want to say NG Esports, but I can't really at this point.
Well, like, if you're talking about like a team going into Europe and then doing good, Tyloo is definitely there. Vici is definitely there. I think Tiger will do good there as well. But I think kind of like my own personal opinion for NG Esports and what we're gonna do is just like we're gonna focus on our region first before I try and reach out and then like bite off more than we can chew, because that would be so stupid. I think. We presented an opportunity now to like try and so-called like claim the throne of Asia. But what we want to do is first of all get into those like events where it's like if it's invite only, they'll consider NG Esports, and it's not gonna be like a 4 invite like Tiger Invictus, Beyond, and Vici. I mean Tyloo, sorry, not even Tiger, Tyloo actually. So we want to get into like a solid. We want to get a solid foothold in Asia first, and then once we have, or we will, or maybe we will, prove that we're like a staple and a solid like contender in Asia, then maybe you talk about EU and like NA or whatever. But right now Asia's like our first priority. Like we got to start with like humble targets and like don't bite off more than we can chew, I guess. So yeah.
Okay.
From my perspective, how good could some of these Asian teams be if they got consistent EU prac and boot camps? Look, all I'm saying is Extremum and Renegades are over there, and they are really struggling against, tier 3, 4 European teams online. I'm seeing like the 4th or the 5th best team in Denmark push fucking Extremum all the way to the line. So I'm thinking, okay, like not great. They're going to struggle with a lot of these European teams. The level of competition over there is just fucking insane, really. And to be honest, I don't think we've properly seen an Asian team actually pick up and go and put themselves in another region this whole time, like since CSGO's inception, really. And I can't blame them, because culturally that's a fucking nightmare. Like I don't think any of them would want to do that. That sounds like living hell, to just go and plant yourself in a Western country, and it sounds very uncomfortable to me. But I would love to actually like see this thought experiment play out. I would love to plug Tyloo or Vici, maybe NG or something like that, Tiger, into some of these tier 2 European tournaments. Chuck them in ESEA Premier, and I just want to see if they actually contend for playoffs, or whether they just do kind of mediocre, because it's not easy, man. It's really not easy. Like all of these European teams that you're not even thinking about when you're watching, the top tier of European competition, are just as liable to beat, Vici, Tyloo, etc., than the top boys.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, we've got 2 more questions. I'm gonna cut things off after that, so no more questions in the Twitch chat, or maybe if you do put one in, we'll get to it next week, because we are running short on time today. Quick one from Nikhathi. This one's for you, Impression. He wants to know what's the latest with Tyloo, if you've heard anything, because they've been a little bit quiet lately. And I have to say, I'm also interested, which is why I've asked the question, because I haven't really heard anything from Tyloo lately.
I think they just got back from the Chinese New Year break.
Right.
And they started practicing just, I think, last week, I believe. And it doesn't seem like they have a roster change. I still see the same 5 players on the server when we practice them. But I guess so basically Nikhil asked is just like they're turning out interviews and stuff and being very quiet. I think that's just like very I think the Chinese people are a bit shy to do like maybe like an English interview.
Mm.
Yeah, because of obviously it's not a language that they're very fluent in like most of the time, and they mainly want to focus on their presence, social media wise, whatever, within mainland China itself. It's a bit sad, to say, but that is the truth of it. So I guess that's probably why they turned down interviews. But honestly, as a team, they're still practicing. I would say like they're a bit rusty from the Chinese New Year break, but they're still shooting good, still very Tyloo-ish.
All right, we will
Yep.
see. I'm quite keen to see how things go because they did have a pretty bad run of form at the end of 2020. The last question it's from pocapocalulu. Had to try and figure that one out while you were talking, how I would say that. But of the upcoming ANZ Champs matches, is there a particular match you guys are most excited for? I guess this is for me and Pilski. And I'd have to say the Direwolves versus Animal Squad game actually on Thursday is probably the one I'm most interested in seeing. Mostly just because we haven't seen that new Direwolves roster / ex-Avant roster. And also I think that the Animal Squad team is pretty interesting. So I wouldn't mind seeing how they go against a pretty decent squad, right? They already had their first game. They won that. That's fine. But put them up against a top 4 team and see how they go. And that could be a pretty interesting game, I think.
Yeah, I think the whole season's interesting because everything's been turned on its head, to be honest. Like, there's so much parity. There's a million roster changes. We've had, like, musical chairs in all of the teams except for Order, pretty much. Even Order's made a roster change. So I think they're all pretty good. If I was to say, I mean, this season we're trying to go for the content, mate. So, like, I want to see, like, the Vertex versus Direwolves matchup because Soju's dogged the boys. I want to see Vexite versus Chiefs right after he's dogged the boys. And get some like head-to-head interviews pre-game and ask him like, how's it feel that old mate's left your team and is now playing for the other team, and get a bit of a grudge match vibe going on. That's like my ideal sort of scenario. At the end of the day, I feel like some of the CS players might be a little bit too nice, and they might be like, "Yeah, he's a really good player." So
I reckon we'll get a bit. I reckon we'll get a bit out of this.
I'm hoping to get some banter. I'm really hoping to get some banter and some good matches.
Indeed. And I know you're hoping to get some sleep as well, Pilski, because you're going to be getting up at what 2:30 in the morning tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm gonna need to get. Let's see if I can get myself a solid 3 hours of sleep before I start a. What is it? I mean, this isn't straight because there's a big gap in between games. But I start at 5 a.m. and I usually finish about 4 p.m. on 3 hours of sleep. So it's a good time. Yeah, it's my favorite day of the week, Wednesday. Fucks my life up.
All right, let's go. Well, hopefully you won't get interrupted by the plumber looking for the keys as he walks around the office while you're sleeping on the sofa in the middle of the games. Anyway, that's the end of Geographically Challenged. If you're interested in seeing more content like this, go watch Pilski casting ESEA in about 6 hours, 7 hours. I'm not really sure exactly how long it is, but that should be a good time.
Yeah, it will be. Hold on, we got Sprout versus Attacks. That's the European game, so that's going to be fun.
That's good. Anyway, any final words from you, Pilski, before we throw it to bed? I suppose in this instance.
Not really, man. Like I feel like we're in such a like very uncertain time in terms of Asian CS. Like I have no fucking idea what 21's going to look like. I was thinking that when we were heading into 2020 and we ended up with all those fucking crazy. Like I remember we said, Jordan, we were like, I don't think we're going to get very much work this year. Like I think this is going to be a quiet year. We did a lot of broadcasts last year. I think that we're going to do a third of the broadcasts that we did. And then you had all those fucking Dreamhack and RMR tournaments come out of the woodwork. So, look, I'm hopeful. I got my fingers crossed. I have, again, a bit of a pessimistic outlook in terms of how many events I'm going to get to cover. But even if I don't get to cover events, I just hope that there's still tournaments that kick around to keep the players motivated and still try to see some of these top teams in Asia go overseas and give it a crack.
What about your final thoughts then, ImpressioN?
Well, I mean, like everyone's like experiencing this like dry spell of Counter-Strike in Asia. Hopefully it gets better after this. Like I've been so excited to play like a proper tournament with my full lineup for such a long time, and I'm finally gonna be able to do that like this weekend. So like expectations from everyone aside, I'm just happy to be able to play competitive Counter-Strike, and hopefully that remains true for the rest of the year. So yeah.
I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to watch it as well. I'm hoping there's going to be an English broadcast because I can't stand using the Chinese platforms. Like I will watch it on Huya or Douyu or whatever it's on, but it's like such a struggle. And then it like cancels your stream after 10 minutes or lowers the quality or something because you don't have an account. I'm just like, fuck this. I just stop watching.
Yeah.
Anyway, That's the end of the episode. Thanks, guys, for watching. Sorry that it's a bit of a quicker one, a bit of a shorter one. I think we could have talked about a couple of those topics, especially earlier on, for a little bit longer. But we've got one man that needs to go to bed, one man that probably needs to go to scrim or do something else, and me, who doesn't really have any other obligations. So it's not my fault, basically, is what I'm saying. But I am going to close the show out. Thanks very much for watching. You can follow us on Twitter, support me on Patreon, support me on YouTube, support me on Twitch if you are watching this on YouTube. And we'll love to see you next time. So thanks very much and see you then.